After leaving me and our children for his online romantic interest, my husband has been absent for 8 years. He has recently reappeared, claiming to have an opportunity for me. I am experiencing ambivalence about a recent decision I made regarding my family and would appreciate input from others. My life has been significantly disrupted by this situation. 8 years ago, my husband Robert abruptly informed me of his intention to leave me and our children. He stated that he had met an attractive woman online with whom he had developed a romantic interest. His decision came as a complete surprise and caused me significant distress. Robert had been exhibiting unusual behavior for several weeks prior to this revelation, but I initially attributed it to work-related stress. Related stressors included the fact that we had been married for over a decade and had remained committed to one another through periods of significant challenge. I had known him for half my life and had been instrumental in building a family together. The possibility of infidelity had never been a concern. One evening, Robert finally disclosed that he had met someone. His admission caused me immense distress. He revealed that the woman's name was Isabella and that she was exceptionally attractive. He had been in communication with her for the past 3 months and had developed a strong connection with her that led him to recognize the need for change in our marriage. His words had a profound impact on me. The emotional impact was akin to being stabbed. A complex mixture of anger and despair swirled in my stomach. He continued to reassure me that he still loved us, but he was unable to deny his feelings for Isabella. He insisted that he needed to meet her in person to ascertain the potential for a developing relationship. I was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions, unable to make sense of what was happening. It felt as though the walls of our home were closing in on me. My voice quivered as I asked him if he was leaving us and the children for this woman. He nodded slowly and said that although he did not expect me to understand, he needed to do so. He informed me that he had given the matter considerable thought and that he was prepared to meet her and embark on a new life. He stated that he was willing to provide us with as much financial support as possible, but that he felt compelled to pursue a relationship with the woman he loved. I was overwhelmed by the suddenness of the announcement and the realization that my husband was leaving me and our children for someone he had never met in person. I was incredulous that my husband was leaving me and our children for someone he had never met in person. My immediate reaction was to scream, plead, or do anything to make him stay. However, I looked at his face and knew that he had already made his choice and there was no turning back. Robert moved out in the following week. I was left to explain to our children that their father would not be returning. Emily, aged 9, had a multitude of questions, but I was unable to provide answers. Nathan, aged 4, was too young to fully comprehend the gravity of the situation and clung to me as if he sensed that something was amiss. I was severely misguided. I felt numb and devastated during this period, and my children were the sole source of support that kept me from succumbing to my grief. When I initially informed my family about Robert's actions, they exhibited the same response as me. They were unable to comprehend why, after such a long marriage, my husband would suddenly abandon me and our children. At that time, my parents advised me to pursue legal action, but I lacked sufficient information to make an informed decision. I was still hopeful that my husband would return. When Robert's parents learned of his departure, they repeatedly contacted him, imploring him to return. However, he maintained that he had no intention of doing so. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. I was left to cope with the situation, both for my own sake and for the children's. Our family and friends extended support and offered a shoulder to lean on. I concentrated on sought employment to provide a stable environment for Emily and Nathan. However, the pain of my husband's betrayal persisted during this period. Robert's parents provided significant assistance, offering financial support and childcare services when needed. 8 years have since elapsed, and Robert's presence in our lives has diminished to a mere distant memory. He previously sent us funds intermittently but otherwise maintained no contact with me or the children. I have largely become a single mother over time, working assiduously to provide for my children and offer them love and attention. Despite occasional recollections of her father, Emily eventually ceased attempting to contact him and learned to refrain from discussing him. In contrast, Nathan's recollection of his father was less detailed, and he never mentioned him. Both individuals have grown up to become remarkable individuals despite the pain of losing their father. Robert's father passed away unexpectedly, and we all attended his funeral. Later, his family lawyer informed us that he wanted to speak with me regarding his will. The lawyer explained that Robert's father had left some money for his grandchildren. While the amount was not substantial, it could potentially assist in covering the costs of higher education. I discussed the matter with my children and informed them that they would no longer need to concern themselves with the financial implications of pursuing a college education. Their expressions reflected a sense of elation, and it was a profoundly heartwarming experience to witness their joy. It felt as if a burden had been lifted, as we had one less concern to contend with after a prolonged period of uncertainty. Last week, I received a call from an unknown number. I was surprised to hear that it was Robert on the other end of the line. I experienced a complex emotional state, rendered speechless by the unexpected call from Robert. After an 8-year interval, he initially hesitated before requesting an urgent meeting. I was perplexed, prompting him to clarify his intentions. He admitted that he wished to discuss an offer with me and repeatedly asserted the urgency of our meeting. I was unable to comprehend the reason for his sudden interest in reconnecting after such a long period. I was perplexed by his decision to contact me after such a lengthy period of time, particularly given his previous lack of communication. His persistent requests, however, made it challenging to decline. I took a moment to collect my thoughts and ultimately consented to meet with him privately, albeit with a degree of caution. The meeting was arranged, and we decided to convene I arranged to meet him at a cafe near my office. As I terminated the call, I was beset by a maelstrom of questions and uncertainties, leaving me anxious about meeting him after 6 years. I decided not to inform my children of the meeting until after it took place, to ascertain the nature of the offer he had mentioned. In the days preceding the meeting, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions, replaying the past in my mind and recalling the pain of Robert's sudden departure, the struggles of raising our children alone, and the years spent trying to come to terms with his abandonment. I arrived early for the meeting. As I waited for Robert, I sipped my coffee, feeling a mixture of nervous anticipation and trepidation. It wasn't long before he arrived, approaching me with a combination of hesitation and determination. I observed that he appeared older, more worn, and somehow different from the man I had married. Our initial exchange was characterized by awkward silences and tentative words. We circumvented the elephant in the room, focusing instead on polite greetings and catching up on the years that had passed. It was as if we were two strangers attempting to navigate the remnants of a past life. Eventually, Robert mustered the courage to begin explaining the reason for his sudden. He then proceeded to discuss the reappearance of Isabella in their lives. He revealed that she was, in fact, a single mother, a fact that she had never revealed to him until after he had left her. Their relationship was beset with numerous challenges, primarily due to her gambling addiction, which led her to squander all of his money. They engaged in frequent arguments, but Robert ultimately chose to remain by her side, reluctant to abandon her once more. However, following the recent passing of his father, he came to recognize the transient nature of life and the importance of pursuing a more fulfilling existence. Robert spoke at length about his feelings of longing for those back home and expressed regret over his decisions 8 years prior. He went on to say that he had contemplated returning to us on numerous occasions but lacked the courage to do so. He then disclosed that his father had bequeathed him a vast property in our hometown, where we used to vacation before Robert's departure. He informed me of his intention to sell the house, which he believed would provide him with financial stability. I listened attentively as he spoke. Robert then made a surprising announcement. He proposed that he wanted to come back to us and provide our children with a luxurious lifestyle. He assured me that I would never have to work again if I accepted him back into our lives. I stared at him in disbelief as he assured me that we could live the rest of our lives without worrying about money. Robert wanted us to reconcile and provide our family with a second chance by using the inheritance to build a better life together. I waited for Robert's words carefully, understanding the potential benefits that the inheritance could bring to our family. However, it was impossible to forget all the years that had passed. He had been absent for years, leaving me to provide for our children as much as the prospect of financial security appealed to me. I was unable to disregard the pain and anger that had accumulated over the years of his neglect. Consequently, I informed him that, while I was grateful for the proposal, I was unable to forget over the past 8 years. I informed him that I had been solely responsible for the upbringing of our children while simultaneously managing my professional obligations. Despite the current lack of material wealth, we had achieved a degree of stability. However, I was unable to justify the risk of subjecting myself and my children to the distress of a potential separation. My primary objective was to safeguard their well-being, and I was uncertain about my ability to do so. I was unable to trust him not to leave us again. Robert persisted in his attempts to persuade me to reconsider, his eyes conveying a sense of desperation. However, I was aware that allowing him back into our lives would entail a significant risk to the stability of our family. I experienced a degree of emotional distress at the prospect of rejecting his offer, particularly in light of the potential financial benefits it could bring. Nevertheless, I was unable to overlook the emotional scars he had left behind following our meeting. My parents have been urging me to reconsider my decision to reject his offer, emphasizing that, given the challenges he has posed for us, it would be unfair to do so. He could provide me and our children with a better life, one free from financial worries and limitations. My parents argue that people can change and that perhaps Robert has realized his mistakes and truly wants to rebuild our family. They believe that I am being selfish and that I should prioritize my children's comfort above my heartbreak. I have spent many sleepless nights grappling with this decision. I have been unable to bring myself to tell my children about Robert's return. I am concerned about how they will react to the news and how they will process the idea of their father returning. Upon his return after an 8-year absence, I have been questioning my own judgment. I am torn between the potential benefits of accepting Robert's offer and the memories of our painful past. I am seeking advice on whether I made the right decision in rejecting Robert's offer and potentially preventing my children and myself from a better life. In just a few days, I received thousands of comments and messages from people. I am grateful that the majority of you do not think I made the wrong decision. I listened to everyone's advice and decided it was time to have an open discussion with my children about Robert was the last thing I desired. I was reluctant to have him reappear in their lives without warning. However, I felt it was necessary to initiate a conversation with them. I decided to speak with Emily and Nathan after dinner. I began by informing them of Robert's unexpected return and his proposal to resume contact. Their expressions reflected a combination of curiosity and confusion as they attempted to comprehend my words. When I informed them that he had inherited the lake house and sought to sell it to assist us, they appeared both intrigued and perplexed. The financial implications of this situation prompted a range of emotional responses. Emily, now 17 years of age, exhibited a spectrum of feelings, from anger to shock. She expressed a similar level of confusion to me and struggled to comprehend the rationale behind Robert's decision to resume contact after such a prolonged absence. While she recalled her father and occasionally experienced a sense of longing for him, she also acknowledged the pain associated with his absence. Initially, she identified a desire for a paternal figure in her life. However, she eventually learned to cope without him and ultimately did not seek a reunion. Nathan, now 12 years of age, conveyed his perspective. Nathan, now 12 years old, stated that he did not recall Robert, and thus did not care much about my rejection of the offer. Nathan struggled to grasp the full implications of the situation. I informed them frankly that whatever decision they made would be respected, as I respected their opinions and emotions. Emily expressed that she had no desire to meet him, and Nathan agreed, stating that he was content with the status quo. I realized that although the idea of potentially mending our family was appealing, the scars from the past ran deep, and my children's well-being was a significant factor in my decision. In my estimation, the paramount consideration was the well-being of my children. I was therefore convinced that I had made the correct decision to terminate the relationship with Robert. I intend to discuss the next steps with my parents. Despite the prevailing opinion, I had never planned to remain married to Robert. However, he initiated the dissolution of the marriage before we could proceed with the legal proceedings. At the time, I lacked the resources to challenge him, but I have since recognized the futility of remaining married to this individual. Robert's calls have become increasingly urgent over the past few weeks, despite my attempts to explain that I am not interested in reuniting with him. I perceived him to be confrontational, and I felt cornered and emotionally drained by his constant attempts to reach me. I was concerned that he might suddenly turn up at my workplace or visit the children at school. Therefore, I decided it was time to reach out to his mother. She was aware of his return and seemed like the only person who could help me understand his motivations and deal with his relentless pursuit. I met with his mother to inform her of my decision to end things with him legally and to express my annoyance with his constant calls. During this conversation, she revealed the real reason behind his persistence. She explained that Robert's father had added a clause to the will when bequeathing him the lake house. This clause stated that he could become the owner of the house if and only if he returned to our family to solidify his claim over the house. I was obliged to sign the relevant documents. This information left me both shocked and dismayed. I finally understood why he had been pursuing me for several weeks. The primary reason he was contacting me was not out of a genuine desire to reconcile or make amends with me but rather to secure ownership of the house. I was subjected to a cruel manipulation of emotions, and I needed to consider my next steps carefully after discovering Robert's true intentions. I realized it was time to act. I did not want to remain in a relationship that was driven by manipulation and secrets. Consequently, I have commenced the process of seeking legal counsel, with the aim of preparing for my divorce proceedings as soon as possible. Furthermore, I have engaged in discussions with my parents, who have expressed regret for their actions in encouraging me to reconsider Robert's proposal. They have come to recognize that Robert has not changed over the years and are supportive of my decision to initiate divorce proceedings. I have informed my parents of my decision to proceed with the divorce. They now recognize that Robert has not changed over the years and are supportive of my decision. They regret advising me to consider his offer and now understand that it was the wrong course of action. I have blocked Robert on all communication channels to prevent further contact. I plan to meet with him directly to discuss the divorce. After serving Robert with divorce papers, I have been able to provide a positive update. As previously mentioned, I served Robert with the divorce papers, and subsequently contacted him with the pretext of meeting him. He immediately agreed. Emily and Nathan expressed a desire to meet their father one last time. They had many questions, and I felt it was essential for them to have some closure despite the pain of the past. Despite the pain of the past, it was essential for the children to have some closure. We arranged for a meeting in a neutral place, a local park where we had spent many happy family moments before Robert's departure. Emily's eyes were filled with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism as she looked at her father, while Nathan clung to my side awkwardly. I began by informing Robert that I was aware of his. Robert asserted that his motivation for contacting us after such a lengthy interval was not merely the clause in his father's will but rather a genuine desire for us to extend him a second chance. I expressed my disbelief, recognizing that I could not trust the veracity of his statements. I informed him that our relationship was at an end and that the least he could do was provide our children with some form of resolution. By answering their questions, he nodded solemnly. Emily commenced by inquiring as to whether leaving them for another woman was a justifiable decision. Robert shamefully averted his gaze as he responded that he was lost and had made a grave mistake. Nathan, with a more direct approach, inquired as to whether finding happiness was more important than leaving his children with his wife. Robert took a deep breath. Before responding that he was of the opinion that he was not thinking clearly at the time and admitted that he was mistaken in leaving us, my children, who are perceptive and strong, were not satisfied with just those answers. Robert attempted to justify his affair, stating that it was his midlife crisis. As the conversation continued, Robert shared painful details of his life with Isabella, the struggles they faced, and the realization that he had been chasing an illusion. Emily and Nathan listened attentively, although it is unlikely that they believed him. They asked him why he had never kept in touch and if he really regretted leaving us. I could discern the pain in my children's voices. Robert admitted that he had been overwhelmed by his own guilt and did not know how to face the consequences of his actions. He reiterated his desire for our family to be reunited and asserted that he could provide us with a luxurious lifestyle. As I gazed into my children's eyes, I was acutely aware that the decision was already made. They did not believe him, just as I did not, and would not allow Robert to resume his role in our lives, offering money as a hasty solution to the damage he had caused. This was a matter of principle and a demonstration of strength. Despite the resilience my children and I had demonstrated over the past 8 years in Robert's absence, I informed him that we had moved on from him and no longer required his presence or financial assistance. I served him with divorce papers, which he received with a combination of remorse and disappointment. He pleaded with me, expressing genuine regret for the years he had missed and his desire to make amends. However, I remained unwavering in my decision. Subsequently, he proposed a division of the proceeds from the sale of the lake house. He asserted that this would be mutually beneficial. Emily interjected, stating that we did not require financial assistance from him. Nathan concurred, adding that we had sufficient resources to achieve happiness. It appeared that Robert had come to recognize the gravity of his actions and began to weep. He repeatedly apologized to the children, stating, he acknowledged that his decision to leave us had been a grave error in judgment and recognized that we would never be able to forgive him. As I departed from the park, accompanied by Emily and Nathan, I experienced a profound sense of liberation. I had not previously realized the immense burden I had been carrying silently for the sake of my children. It was a cathartic experience to witness my children standing up for me and supporting me. Our divorce proceedings will continue as I have planned. I have decided that it will take some time before I am legally freed from him. In the meantime, I intend to take some time off so that I can spend time with my children. I plan to take them to Disneyland, a trip we have been looking forward to for a long time. I want to create happy memories with my children, filled with laughter and joy, to help offset the painful memories of the past. I know that as long as we have each other, we can face whatever the future holds. The future will be faced with strength and resilience despite the challenges and emotional turmoil that have been experienced. My children and I are on a path towards healing and creating a new stable and honest life. This chapter is far from over, but we are going to be writing our own story from now on, and I am determined to ensure it is one filled with love, trust, and growth. Update 4. Since my last update, I have some exciting news to share. I was promoted at work, and it feels like a huge accomplishment. It took a considerable amount of time for me to reach this position, but I am finally earning a comfortable income that allows me to provide even more for my family. The promotion not only brings financial security but also the satisfaction of knowing that my hard work and dedication have paid off in the end. I am pleased to report that things are going well with the divorce proceedings. I have hired an excellent lawyer who, after finding out the history between my husband and me, is confident that the divorce proceedings will be conducted in a smooth and expeditious manner. While the process may not be straightforward, it is a necessary step for achieving closure and a fresh start. Throughout this period, my family and friends have provided invaluable support. Now that I have reached a financial stability that allows for it, I intend to send my children to therapy. I recognize that they may have developed abandonment issues, and I believe that therapy can help them process their emotions and work through any residual issues. I have conducted thorough research on therapists who specialize in this area. The therapist I have found is both compassionate and experienced in dealing with such issues. They specialize in helping children and families navigate complex emotions. As a parent, I believe in promoting the exploration of my children's interests, other than studies. My daughter Emily has a remarkable talent for art and spends hours creating beautiful paintings that adorn our home. My son Nathan has always had a natural talent for soccer, and on weekends, we attend his games and cheer him on. I am proud to see my children thriving in their lives. Regarding Robert, we have not been in contact. I believe it is best to keep it that way. Many of you correctly assumed that his affair partner, Isabella, contacted me one day. The message was not an apology, as one might expect from someone who was the other woman. Instead, it was filled with anger and resentment towards me. She accused me of taking Robert away from her. In her messages, she attributed the dissolution of their relationship to my actions and asserted that I was the cause of his departure. She also hurled insults and made hurtful accusations, questioning my motives and claiming that I had manipulated Robert into returning to our family. The messages were characterized by aggression and distress, and I was overwhelmed by the intensity of her anger. I was astonished that this woman had the audacity to express such intense anger towards me. I responded to her messages, stating that I had no desire to be with Robert and that I was in the process of getting a divorce. I reminded her of the pain and confusion that my family had gone through when Robert left us for her and informed her that she had no right to contact me. I emphasized how our lives had been turned upside down all those years ago and how my children had suffered as a result. It was made clear that there was never any intention of reinstating the relationship with Robert. If she wished to assign blame, she should consider her own role in the situation and her gambling addiction. After sending her the aforementioned message, contact was terminated and it is hoped that she will not attempt to contact me further. It is not my intention to allow her to disrupt the peaceful life that I have built with my children. Contact with Robert's mother is still maintained on occasion as she has always been kind to me. She has expressed regret about the outcome of events and wishes for me to. It is evident that Robert's mother is aware of the implications of my decision not to reconcile with her son. She has revealed that, as a result of this decision, the lake house would not be going to him as his father had intended. This information was unexpected, yet it seemed fitting. This man's selfish decisions have not only caused significant distress within our family but also within another family. It is therefore appropriate that he should suffer the consequences of his actions. It is now time to move forward and leave the past behind. I am confident that this will be possible. The process of recovery is well underway, and the future is becoming increasingly promising. I have moved on to the next phase of my life. In the second phase of my life, my entire family rejected me and refused to communicate with me when they believed I was not a true son of my father. I was raised in a loving and supportive household. My parents had a strong and enduring love for each other and for my siblings and me. They were attentive, caring, and prioritized our needs above their own. My relationship with my parents was particularly positive. My father worked long hours to provide for us, but he always made time for us when he could. He would take us on fishing trips, teach us how to play sports, and tell us stories about his own childhood. My mother, on the other hand, was the glue that held our family together. She cooked us delicious meals, helped us with our homework, and made sure that we were always clean and presentable. I loved my parents, and I knew I had always assumed that my parents were a model couple, and their relationship seemed to be an example of a perfect partnership. However, at some point, their relationship began to deteriorate. It started with minor disagreements, but these soon became more frequent and more intense. I initially attempted to ignore the arguments, but they were impossible to ignore. My mother and father would shout at each other for hours on end. One day, I overheard my father admit to having an affair years ago. My mother was enraged and retaliated by admitting to having an affair of her own. The argument intensified until my father questioned my paternity. I was taken aback, having never considered the possibility that he might not be my biological father. My mother was rendered speechless and unsure of how to respond. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, but I could discern the guilt and shame on her face. My mother's face displayed shame. My father abruptly departed from the residence, and my mother followed him. Following this incident, a significant transformation occurred within the family dynamic. My siblings aligned themselves with my father and ceased communication with me. They were displeased not only with the infidelity of my parents but also with the knowledge that my mother had been unfaithful to my father and that I might not be his biological offspring. They treated me with animosity and disdain, and I felt like an outsider within my own family. My siblings and I found ourselves caught in the middle of their heated exchange. The atmosphere in the house became increasingly tense. My parents' hostility towards each other soon manifested in their treatment of me and my siblings. My siblings, who had previously been close to me, suddenly turned against me. They attributed the deterioration of our family to my presence, claiming that I was a reminder of my mother's affair and that I might not even be my father's biological son. Their words caused me significant distress. I had always perceived our family as a close-knit unit. Despite previously perceiving our family as cohesive, the dissolution of this perception became evident. My parents exhibited a notable shift in their demeanor, becoming detached and aloof. My siblings, on the other hand, displayed a marked change in attitude, becoming hostile and vindictive. I attempted to engage in conversation with my parents, but they were often preoccupied or distracted. It appeared that they were consumed by their own challenges and lacked the capacity to prioritize our interactions. I felt as if I was rendered invisible by my parents and my siblings, who were eager to avoid any contact with me. They ceased inviting me to family gatherings and ceased communicating with me altogether. I was rejected by those who were supposed to be my closest relatives, and I found it difficult to cope with this rejection. I felt like I had lost everything, including my family and my sense of identity. I was bereft of both my home and my identity. I was adrift and alone, uncertain of my ability to regain my footing. Initially, I attempted to establish communication with my siblings, contacting them via telephone and text message with the hope of discussing matters and potentially reaching a resolution. However, they consistently failed to respond. I also tried to reach out to my parents, but they were either unavailable or out of the house. I was eager to speak with someone who could provide guidance and clarity regarding the circumstances I was facing. I went to my mother's house with the hope of speaking with her. However, she asserted that some separation was necessary. Upon seeing me, she instructed me to leave, stating that I was not welcome in her home. The verbal abuse I received was particularly distressing and difficult to process. It was difficult to comprehend how my mother could say such a thing to me after everything that had happened. I subsequently experienced a significant decline in my mental health, characterized by feelings of despair and a sense of being an outsider in my own body. I felt powerless to overcome these feelings and was unsure how to address them. I ceased working and I ceased socializing with my friends and ceased engaging in the activities I previously enjoyed. I spent the majority of my time in bed, either sleeping or gazing at the ceiling. My appetite diminished, and I lost a considerable amount of weight. Months transformed into years, and I came to believe that I would never be able to emerge from the darkness that had enveloped me. Despite residing in close proximity to my siblings and parents, I felt a profound sense of distance and isolation. My parents' house served as a constant backdrop to my life, and I found myself longing for the companionship and support of my siblings and friends. I was so consumed by my pain that I failed to recognize the unwavering presence and assistance of my friends. They frequently contacted me, checked in on me, and initially, I was reluctant to accept their invitations to engage in activities. I was content to dwell in a state of despair. However, over time, I began to accompany them on outings. These included visits to the cinema, dining out, or simply spending time at home. They provided me with the reassurance that I was not alone, which I was grateful for. I began to focus on my own well-being. I sought out therapy and support groups to help me cope with the pain of being rejected by my family. My friends were a constant source of support during this time, and I reached out to them more than ever before. Initially, I was hesitant to talk about what had happened with my family. I was embarrassed and ashamed. However, as time went on, I found that talking about it with my friends helped me process my feelings and move forward. They listened without judgment, offering words of comfort and encouragement. I also found solace in hobbies and activities that brought me joy. I resumed playing the guitar, an instrument I had previously set aside due to depressive symptoms. I discovered that playing music helped to alleviate my distress and provided an outlet for my emotions as I began to prioritize self-care. I observed a gradual improvement in my mental health, noting a reduction in the intensity of the sadness and despair that had previously consumed me. I began to contemplate the future and my aspirations for it. My friends were a constant source of support throughout this period, offering encouragement and a shoulder to lean on when I faced challenges. They helped me recognize that I was not alone and that I had people who loved and cared for me, even if my family did not. Several years later, my grandfather reached out to me. He expressed regret for the way my family had treated me and sought to rectify the situation. He convinced me and my father to undergo a paternity test, which confirmed his status as my biological grandfather. Despite my initial reluctance, I ultimately consented to the request. I was disinclined to revisit the ambiguity of the preceding circumstances, yet I was compelled to ascertain the veracity of the assertion. Upon the return of the results, my family was rendered speechless. They were unable to reconcile the discrepancy between their assertion and the reality of the situation. They acknowledged the gravity of their misdeed and expressed remorse for the distress they had caused me. They recognized the depth of the harm they had inflicted and were determined to rectify the situation. I recall experiencing ambivalence about their abrupt change of attitude. On the one hand, I was gratified by their admission of error, yet on the other, I was uncertain about the sincerity of their contrition. I was gratified that my family expressed a desire to reconcile. It was a long-held aspiration of mine, and it seemed like a dream come true. However, I could not ignore the pain and betrayal I had experienced when they had abandoned me, despite their apologies and entreaties. I remained uncertain about my readiness to forgive and move on. I had established a life for myself, and I was unsure if I was willing to let my family back into it. I was concerned that if I did so, the past might repeat itself, and I would be left hurt and alone once again. I was left in a state of emotional distress, struggling to cope with the pain and isolation that I felt. Despite my efforts to process my emotions, my family persisted in their attempts to communicate with me. They contacted me via telephone, sent written correspondence, and even arranged to visit me in person. They implored me to give them an opportunity to rectify the situation and promised to do whatever was necessary to earn my forgiveness. I recall feeling overwhelmed by their relentless pursuit of communication. It was evident that they were genuinely remorseful for their actions and sincerely desired to rebuild our relationship. Despite their persistence, I was unable to shake the feeling that they were only reaching out to me because they felt guilty. I inquired about the well-being of my family over the past 3 years and was informed that they had undergone therapy and that my parents had reconciled. I was deeply hurt to learn that they had moved on without me, as though I had never existed. Despite their requests for forgiveness, I chose to decline any further contact with them. I was reluctant to reopen old wounds and place myself in a vulnerable position once more. I was unwilling to risk being hurt once more. They had previously dropped me, and I was not inclined to allow them to do so again. I informed them that they could continue without me, as they had done for many years. It would make no difference to me. I had finally found peace and happiness, and I was not willing to allow them to take that away from me again. I had formed a new family, and my friends were the ones who had been there for me throughout.